Hi, it's me again with Corel Draw Tips and Tricks, and somebody sent me this file. Well, I asked them to send it. They were thinking they had double lines. I did not find any double lines, but what I did find is, well, one nice thing, this is all the same. Each one of these blue ones, there's 9 blue ones, there's 9 yellow ones, and I've already stole 2 blue ones, I think. They're all exactly the same. And I actually brought in a living hinge that I designed a couple years ago to look at. And she was saying that they were falling apart. And it's just whoever drew this, and I'm not blaming them or doubting them, like that line goes all the way to the edge, the other line doesn't. So that's going to cause this piece to fall out because this is just cutting it out and it's just going to be held on by just a little bit. And cutting all the way to the edge doesn't really matter, but there's some inconsistencies in this file. Like there's 3 lines that meet the line, and then there's 3 or 4 lines that don't meet the line, and then there's one that meets the line. And then there's open space, 3 long bars, open space, bars all over a long space. And looking at the item, it only curves that much. I mean, it's just a slight curve, and then it's got a bottom. And I think it's actually a pencil holder. So what I would do in this case, I'm going to pick out one that's the most consistent or change one of them. It doesn't matter if it cuts all the way to the end, as long as the wood, like that's going to actually cut through it so close. So the wood's going to be connected by this, as long as you can go through there like this, but then you get here and it has to go all the way back. So my suggestion would be able to, and to me, they all need to be on the same plane. I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to nudge it out of the way, and I'm actually going to delete. Well, here's another thing we can do is move that over, and you see that it's a not consistent file. And if we look, there's probably a leak. There's some nodes down here. Well, it looks pretty good, but let's do a test. And then that way we can make this all the same. So let's get out the rectangle tool and fill in. And sure enough, we have a leak. So where is the leak? Take a 2-point line, just draw a couple of lines through, define the leak, and the leak is on the bottom for sure. It's not in the middle, it's not in the top. So it's in the bottom. We can actually bring this line down more. Take another line and do like, take another straight line and go like this. And then we can use the Smart Fill tool. And voila, our leak is right there in that corner somewhere. And there was a node there. And there it probably is right there. And if we back up, they're not perfectly aligned. So that's going to cause a leak. So one, you can nudge it down to it is aligned. Now we can try the Smart Fill tool again, and voila, it's fixed. That's not that big a deal, but what we want to do is have a good strong surface to work against. So now I want to take these lines out of the way and go ahead and take my rectangle now, because I know it doesn't leak. And I'm going to fill it in. I'm actually going to change color to a black. Fill it in and then nudge that over. And I'm going to right click in red. So now we have a completed box without any extra lines. And because we've nudged, we can nudge right back. And then I can take my new box and nudge it over, and you see what we're doing. But I'm actually going to change this line to make it a little stronger. The lines going all the way through don't really matter, going all the way through the edge. Matter of fact, it would probably be better, because if you don't go all the way through, you're going to break them. So let's go ahead and fix that. And let's make it, let's make it 30 millimeters. And that put the lines to the edge. That was lucky. Maybe we're a little, no, that was good and lucky. We might be a little bit over on some, but that's, you could actually take it and just move it just a little bit if you think it's over, because it will cut past there just a hair. But now we need to make this better. So like there's I'm gonna just draw a rectangle between those two lines, and I'm gonna nudge this thing down to this one. Back up here, I should have used the control button to nudge it down. Then I can take the virtual segment delete key and delete that line. Now we have a solid space, solid, solid space. See, so we got a consistency. We're a little bit off here. We actually probably need maybe make this one a solid line so we can take our shape tool and just make it a solid line. So we've got some consistent pattern. So what's going to happen, the wood is going to be held together. See if I can do this. The wood is going to be held, I guess it'd take it if I can use the freehand tool. The wood is going to be held, and I'm going to make one more change. See, the wood can just still be held together because all the joints. I'm going to make one more cut in this box. And if you use that same rectangle, because I actually want that very first one to be cut out. Now, you don't have to do every box, you know. So now we got a short, long, long, short, short, long, long, short, and I'm not going to take the time to make sure everything's perfect. We actually have 3 shorts up here. That won't hurt. So now what I want to do is Control D, Control G and make a group of that, and Control D and make a duplicate. And as most of the time their duplicate distance is set on default, set this on 0, 0. So when we make a duplicate of it, it'll make it right on top. Control D. Now I'm going to nudge it over, and I'm just going to use this exact same one and place it in here. And I'm going to show you how you can get it more centered here in a second. Make a duplicate of that, hit the plus key on the keyboard, move it up to there, and we're going to work on getting them centered a little bit better. Plus key or duplicate. Whoop. I need to grab just that and hit the plus key, and then move it down, holding down the control button so it'll be perpendicular, even though we're going to double check that in just a second. Now, let's delete all these bad ones that we don't need. I think I must have backed up. So we've got some good joints. And what's so nice about this, I'm going to Control G for just a second, and I'm going to move all this out of the way. And for the one I'm doing this for, I would cut out one at a time and test it, and I would test my joint. I would never, and this is color mapping where the red line is going to cut out and the blue line is going to cut out, the red line is going to just vector engrave, which is pretty smart. The joints are really close to that, but you could play around with that. I don't know why they've got so many different colors. In case, well, in rastering, I could see why you would do that, but vectoring, I don't understand why it's like that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go ahead and ungroup this, and we're going to get them more in the center. And by doing that, we ungrouped them, but our big deal is still in the group, and this is still in the group. So even though I use the control button most of the time, I'm going to grab that, hold down the shift key, and hit C. And that put my joint right in the center of the page. Right now, I'm just caring about that. Grab that, hold down the shift key, hit C. It's just centering. You could probably, you can't only do one at a time because it would center them Well, maybe so. Let's just try this. I think it worked. You could just center them all. Now, as you can see, we're a little bit long on this one. So this is where I would take my nudge key and set it like 0.01. Grab that one. If you can't ever grab it, you can always come from the side. And let's just nudge this guy up. Now, this one particularly is a little bit long. So what you could do is take your group and ungroup and take that line away and take this line away. I'm having trouble just getting that one line. And then group this together again, Control G, and then nudge that up. I hope that made sense what I did. And I just see another problem I need to, this one, I'd rather have a short line here. And so what I did, let's try this. It's going to be a lot of steps because I took it away. Okay, I'd rather have that short line here. So sorry about that. Let's take away this long line. Group and ungroup. Let's take away, well, it's the same thing. I'd rather not have this elongated line as my first line, even though it's going to be strong. I think that'll work. So that'll work. And then just kind of do the same for the other three. Because we have them in the center, I want to change my nudge distance like 0.05 this time. And I'm going to nudge this one down to kind of get it in between there. The next one I think is good. The next one could maybe go up a little bit. It's pretty close, but you can always grab from the side. And I just put them right in between. Now, what is so nice about this, you're done. Control G and group that together and just, see, here's my design of a living hinge. You've got some longs in the middle and then shorts on the outside. This would actually probably work for this hinge. It might be a little bit small. But then I would just, for the person I'm doing this for, I would just delete these and then make him, you know, like I said, I would only cut 2 of these out at a time or 1 of them out at a time. So I would cut, you know, this, you know, unless you're really in production mode, you need 2 sides of this. So Control D or hit the plus key on your keyboard. And the only reason they had theirs flipped and they mirrored it so they could get a few more on the sheet, which is relatively smart. I don't understand all the color mapping. I would make everything red that you're going to cut. And, you know, these 2 pieces are really close together. And, I mean, that's saving sheet space for sure, but just kind of move it over a little bit. Well, I didn't grab the whole thing. But this would be, you know, this is color mapping. And I'm pretty sure on an epilogue, which I have, black is not one of the colors. So if you change this to red, this is what I would do if it was an epilogue. Change this to red, and then change this black. And you can see which one you've gotten right here. I would change the black to a blue. And then color map that. And if you're not familiar with color mapping, this would be a perfect case of doing this. And these are identical, by the way. If I was going to do this one particular, I would, instead of color mapping, if you're just going to cut out one to test, so we got a 175, let's change our nudge distance to 180. And a lot of people are going to say this is a little unorthodox, but I would take the black and nudge it off, or the blue now, and nudge it off, and then I would cut this file out. And I would leave everything in place and then cut all this out. Then take it and nudge this out of the way, nudge these back, and vector engrave that at like 100 power and 75 speed, so it won't cut all the way through your wood, instead of color mapping. But if you're going to cut out a bunch, after you test them, I would definitely test these joints, you know, on one or even more. I've never really seen that right there. That's a pretty neat idea. It might snap into the bottom. I'm gonna have to give that a shot. So for the person I did it for, you didn't have any double lines. You just had some lines that were gonna make it weak. And this, you know, like I said, that's very little of a curve. You could almost do that without any, you know, if you use eighth, well, let's see what size wood this is for. Take your pillow dimension tool. See, that's just 1/8 inch wood. I guarantee you could make it bend that much, 1/8 inch wood, and not even worry about this. And I think it would actually look better without all the cut lines and burn lines and having to sand all that. So I would try that, because 1/8 inch plywood or any wood is going to bend that much without any problem. Anyway, I hope that helped a little bit. Thank you for watching.